Welcome to Baha'i Critic. Today we'll talk about money. There are 230 local spiritual assemblies registered with the Canada Revenue Agency. And instead of going through each one, I randomly selected 25 and look at their information for the year 2016. And for each local spiritual assembly, we'll look at the revenue, their programs of their own description, and any donees, that is, if they transferred any funds to another organization. So I noticed, I don't want to try not to be redundant, so all these local spiritual assemblies, they share common programs in their description, like feasts, assembly meetings, core activities, which I'm sure you know what they are, observance of holy days, and there are other religious activities mentioned like firesides, conventions. One of the LSAs, they said that they advertise the faith weekly in a newspaper. So you get the point. So let's start. You have the LSA of Burlington, raised $30,000, okay, for the year 2016, and they transferred 98% to the National Spiritual Assembly of Canada. Okay, if there are any other donees, I would mention it, but that's the only one. And the SpongeBob picture, just to show that they did no humanitarian work whatsoever, according to their own description. They have the LSA of Colwood, 20,000, 96% transferred to the NSA. Again, no humanitarian work. LSA of Comox, 15,000, 85% to the NSA. LSA of Coquitlam, I'm probably not pronouncing it right, 98,000, 75% to the NSA. LSA of Fort Erie, 7,000, 36% to the NSA, which is surprisingly low. LSA of Fort Saskatchewan, 8,000, 78% to the NSA. LSA of Greater Vancouver A, I don't know what the hell the letter A means, 12,000, 75% to the NSA. You know, you get the point. It's always this large, almost all the money gets transferred to the NSA. LSA of Long, whatever the hell that shit is, 3,000, 62% to the NSA. LSA of Milton, 14,000, 85% to the NSA. Finally, we get a humanitarian work here. The LSA of Newmarket, they mentioned that they supported the In from the Cold program and the local food bank. They raised 36 grand, and over 128% of that money went to the NSA, which means that they had a lot of money in reserves that was also sent to the NSA. That's a lot of cash. LSA of North Battleford, 11,000, 90% to the NSA. It's getting tedious. LSA of North Vancouver District, 127,000, 97% to the NSA. LSA of Pickering, 15,000, 102% to the NSA, which means they had money in reserves that they also sent, which means they donate more than 15,000 to the NSA. LSA of Rocky View County, over 1,000. They didn't transfer any funds, so the only thing I can mention to you is that they spent $78, and of course no humanitarian work. LSA of Saanich, whatever the fuck that is, 80,000, 71% to the NSA. And they participated in the Adopt a Highway program, which means that they volunteer to clean a section of the highway, and in exchange of that work, their name gets advertised on a sign. I mean, you could say that, you know, it doesn't really count as I consider it as a humanitarian, even though they're also promoting their faith. So kudos for them. LSA of St. John, 8,000, it's 92% to the NSA. Salmon Arm, 9,000, 85% to the NSA. Saskatoon, 100,000, 66% to the NSA. LSA of Sault Ste. Marie, wow, I'm not pronouncing that shit right. 18,000, 93% to the NSA. LSA of Squamish, 18,000, 79% to the NSA. So they participated in the multi-faith Thanksgiving food drive. How generous of them. Well, kudos to them, actually. LSA of Strath, I'm not even gonna attempt to pronounce that. 52,000, 97% in the NSA. Man, it's getting pretty long. Tiny Township, 5,000. They spent 5,000. Great. They didn't transfer any funds. So LSA of Town of Mount Royal, they made nothing and they spent nothing. And the only time they made money was back in 2014, so 2 years ago, 2 years prior to 2016, and that was $150, and they almost a quarter of that went to the NSA. LSA of Vernon, 83% went to the NSA, and 0.3%, which means $50, went to the United Way. So kudos to them. LSA of Wood Buffalo, 10,000. They didn't transfer any funds. They spent $1,500 of that cash. So what I'm trying to show in this slide is that in every city or town you have an LSA. Okay, so I give you 3 examples: Milton, Pickering, Vernon. Each city and town has an LSA, and most of the money that the LSA generates gets sent to the National Spiritual Assembly, the NSA, which is located in Thornhill. And since Thornhill is a city on its own, it also has an LSA too. So, and most of the cash from the LSA of Thornhill gets also sent to the NSA. So all the money is pretty much being collected in one pool. So here's the LSA of Vaughan in Thornhill that I mentioned to you. They raised 92,000 and 79% went to the NSA. Now, the National Spiritual Assembly of Canada that I mentioned before, located in Thornhill, they raised 14 million and they spent 19 million, which means they had 5 million in reserves. That's crazy. And just to show you, this is their own description of their programs. So, and just to show you that they do no humanitarian work whatsoever, it says activities designed to promote and protect the teachings of the Baha'i faith throughout Canada and to collaborate with other Baha'i institutions in Canada and abroad on similar projects. Similar projects, which means that they have to do with promoting and protecting the Baha'i faith. Activities include supplying pioneers and travel teachers, in other words, missionaries, throughout Canada and arranging conferences, conventions, and seminars to promote the teachings of the Baha'i faith, producing and supplying literature and audiovisual materials to promote the faith. Listen, this is all about promoting the Baha'i faith. That's it. All this cash. It's kind of sad because in every city and town, I'm sure there are poor people, people who need aid. And instead of, I don't understand, the Baha'is in a particular city who raise all this money every year, instead of spending it on their own city, trying to lift it up like they claim to do, they don't. They just spend most of the cash to the NSA. And NSA, what it does is builds grandiose temples and, like you just heard them right, missionaries and shit. This is sad, folks. Really sad. This religion is not much humanitarian at all. Peace.